Wow, it is kind of a gloomy day while I record this, so pardon me if the lighting looks all weird. I'm Chris Brogan. We are talking about growth today in The Owner's Heart, part of the Owner's Life series. What I wanted to talk about was the fact that I think when we first come to the concept of growth being part of what you need to build your base camp in the owner's heart, what I'm looking at is for you to start to believe that growth is part of a very constant and ongoing cycle from here on out. So in my mind, first off, let's think of one of the key elements of how one grows. It would be through training. So to me, with training, you have to elevate your choice to train all the way to the same as eating and sleeping. So eating, sleeping, and training. Now, what's training? Training is any kind of learning or practice or experience that you're doing over and over again that you're doing more or less daily, and you're doing it with the intent that you're going to keep up some level of skill. So we train to maintain and grow a certain level of skill. And I've already told you that growth is part of the storyline. So one of the important things to think about is whatever you decide you're going to put into that bucket of growth and or training is something that you're committing to doing all the time. So for instance, you may say, well, there's a real difference between someone who decides they want to run a 5K versus who is a runner. You know, someone who identifies as a runner is going to run all the time, and you want to maintain some kind of level of ability to run at all times. That would be someone who's training. The other thing is usually we train for a mission. So we train for whatever the thing is that we're supposedly doing in our life and what we're hoping to do better. So for instance, I'm training to get better at sales because it seems important for everything I do in my business world that I know how to sell better. And I'm not a very good salesperson. So my goal is to make that not a true statement. So in my processing, what I've learned to do is, well, then how does one train for selling, and how does one make that part of my growth? And so one of the things that I do is I keep it sort of on a daily to-do and daily task process because it just fits into those things that are training. So eat, sleep, and train are on the same level. Like I don't say to you, hey, did you eat yesterday? Oh, no, I forgot to. I got so busy. You know, we usually can say that kind of, or we, mush our meals into the later part of the day and maybe the very beginning of the day and we miss throughout the day, but you pretty much have eaten. Did you sleep? Well, you can miss a day of sleep. You can sometimes miss a couple days of sleep, but of course, eventually you sleep. Well, we need training on those things that you commit to in your growth process to be just as important as that. So that's the first thing I want you to think about, is the fact that anything in training for growth is that. The other big element of growth is the concept of no excuses. I always tend to think of that in the hashtag form, hashtag no excuses, and it's because that's sort of how it first came into my life. And why we talk about that is that a lot of times we have excuses for why we don't do something in training. And I don't think that that's what we're hoping to accomplish anymore. You've already done that before, right? You've already done that where you've said you've committed to something and it falls off, especially if it's something for you. You're able to keep commitments for other people a little bit better than the ones that you set for yourself, right? I tend to tell people that when we can't really stay committed to something, it's especially if it has something to do with ourselves, it's because of a lack of love and a lack of self-love. And I know that sounds a little bit gushy, but I believe that that's true. I believe that when we are having trouble keeping our commitments and maintaining our discipline, it is because we are suffering through some kind of I'm not good enough, or this doesn't matter enough, or, everybody else needs to come ahead of me, so I'm not going to find the time to do it. And that's just not healthy and helpful and not really especially good for you. So when we look at growth and training and discipline and commitment and all these things, it all rolls into a bucket of believing in the mission that you've set out for yourself, believing that you have some goals and whatever to take care of, and then really elevating them to the level of daily exercise, daily effort, and how you're not going to make excuses along the way for what you're executing and what you're trying to get done. One way to make that true is really to put it into your daily plan. So for instance, and we'll talk about it on and off, but we have things, for instance, in my planning day, like the 5x5, which is the different elements of my life, various circles of my life that I'm working on. I have different goals and whatnot that I use to accomplish during those. The other thing I have, though, is I keep notes. So this particular, see if you can see it, this particular app is Google Keep. It's just a bunch of notes. So imagine come on, lights, there we go. Imagine that. So that gives you a real sense of what's going on in my life via a bunch of little tiny, think of it like sticky notes or something, except digital in this particular case. In there is a whole list of things that I train to, and that means that I work on them daily and that they're part of my daily throughput and whatnot and daily flow. And so it's important that you systematize that. It's important that you find a way that you make those things part of your daily flow. But as I've already said, if it's daily, you have to really understand how much you can or can't take on. You can't take on everything, right? So if you are going to train to be a marathon runner, you probably can't also train to be a speed skater as well as a power lifter as well as something else. There's just only so many hours in a day. And especially as we're relating this to our business life as well as our professional and personal lives and all that, we have to understand just how much time we do have allotted to us and what kind of inventory we have. So that helps you start to prioritize, really, because if you think about it, if it's not important enough to do daily, then it doesn't belong on your training list. If it's nothing you can commit to, then it doesn't belong on your training list. So those kinds of things like, I really should learn Spanish, fall off eventually. And that's something you just choose. You decide, okay, fine, I'm not committed to that like I want. Maybe I should, maybe I shouldn't. But if it really matters to me, I'm going to put it in my daily training plan. So every day, without fail, one way or another, I do something with regards to my fitness, for instance. I eat on a specific plan every day. Now, that doesn't mean that sometimes I'm not in a situation where I have to kind of modify or adjust, but I measure for that. I use an app to keep track of my food so that even if I'm hitting some wrong choices throughout the earlier part of the day, I can make up for it in the later part of the day or something like that. That process, that set of commitments, that ability to stick to my training gives me compound benefits elsewhere. So my physical fitness training, every time I accomplish it, I have that sense of, yes, I did something, and that stretches to other parts of my life. The eating healthy means that I've fueled myself well every day. The making sure I don't overcommit and don't overbook my schedule, which is part of my daily plan, makes it so that I have the ability to accomplish what I need to do. So all of these things all play to each other. It's all part of growth. So one of the most important parts of growth is understanding how do you systematize your commitments. How do you, as Rob Hatch calls it, how do you put success in your way? In work like you're on vacation, which I think we get to in a few weeks from now, how do we put success in your way? How do we do all the work it's going to take for you to stay stuck to your commitments and all that? What I like to tell people a lot is that commitments are discipline, like the discipline to do it daily, plus sacrifice, making sure that you don't do those kinds of things that don't need doing. And also just that whole sense that it really matters to you enough that you're going to stick to it all the way through. Let me just look at something really quick. Discipline, sacrifice, and training. So that's how you maintain a commitment. That's what also equals the integrity of doing what you said you're going to do and making it all mesh together, integratedness. So discipline, sacrifice, and training are what build up strong commitment and strong integrity. And that's what you need for a growth mindset. Also in the growth mindset, what you're looking to do is never stop, never hit an accomplishment and call it good enough. You're always seeking the next level. $10,000 is your goal this month, then make it $12,000 next month or something like that. Never try to make the goal so high that you can't quite get at it. Although we talk a little bit about that in Grant Cardone's 10X rule. But, your real, attainable goals that you're going after, that part of things, you really have to keep pushing yourself further. In my physical training, I do that. So if I can, if I can back squat 225 a couple of 3 times onto the box, then next time I'm going to try to do it not on the box so I can get down even lower and things like that. You're trying to amp up your abilities and whatnot just a little bit each time, and that becomes important as well. Let me just look at really quick. I want to just make sure I've got everything covered. When it comes to your frame for growth, one of the other questions is sort of what are you training for? So make sure you're always thinking that way. What am I training for? And make sure that this is part of what you're doing. You want to be able to have more and more capabilities. We get into capabilities in the owner's mind, but as you're building out this for the owner's heart, that's what you're looking for in your daily life and all that, and part of growth. Now, another part of growth is the growth of the other people around you or those people in the team that you support as well. How do you help them with their growth? That becomes important too. So remember that this isn't just entirely for you and not entirely for your side of the puzzle. I think it's important to think on both sides of that coin. So I wanted you to have all this. We have a little bit more inside the text file as well and some homework and things like that. But I wanted to give you something to think about. I'm Chris Brogan. Thanks so much for being part of this.